History often sparks our imagination, forcing us to consider what might have been, or what could still be. Among the most fascinating empires in history is the Ottoman Empire, a vast and enduring state that, at its peak, stretched across 3 continents. For over 6 centuries, it dominated politics, commerce, and culture, leaving a mark that still resonates across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. But what if this empire, long dissolved after World War I, suddenly returned in the 21st century? How would it navigate the modern world, with its complex geopolitics, technological advancements, and globalized economy? Could it assert influence as it did centuries ago, or would the modern era render it an anachronism? Exploring this hypothetical scenario allows us to examine not only the legacy of the Ottoman Empire, but also the enduring nature of power, culture, and identity in the contemporary world. The Ottoman Empire: legacy and historical influence. The Ottoman Empire, founded around 1299 by Osman I in the Anatolian region of modern-day Turkey, began as a small principality but gradually expanded to dominate vast regions of Europe, Asia, and Africa. At its height, under the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century, the empire was a military powerhouse with an intricate administrative system. The Ottomans were pioneers of governance, balancing centralized authority with local autonomy through the millet system, which allowed different religious communities to manage their own affairs. This system enabled the empire to maintain cohesion over a remarkably diverse population, including Muslims, Christians, Jews, and other groups. Economically, the Ottomans controlled major trade routes, including key passages between Europe and Asia, which made them indispensable players in global commerce. Their legacy endures today in cultural elements, architecture, cuisine, language, and legal systems, influencing societies long after the empire's official dissolution in 1922. Despite its grandeur, the Ottoman Empire faced internal and external challenges. Corruption, administrative inefficiencies, and nationalist movements gradually weakened the empire, particularly in the 19th century. By the time of World War I, its ability to compete with modern nation-states had diminished, ultimately leading to its collapse. Yet, the empire's long-lasting cultural and political influence makes it an enduring point of fascination. Imagining its revival today is not merely a flight of fancy. It is an exercise in understanding how historical power structures could interact with contemporary global systems. Pathways to a modern revival, and at first glance, the idea of an empire that ceased to exist nearly a century ago suddenly reappearing may seem impossible. Yet, history is full of surprises. Hypothetically, there are multiple pathways through which the Ottoman Empire could reemerge. One scenario might involve political instability in Turkey and surrounding regions creating a power vacuum. In such a situation, a new centralized authority could claim the historical Ottoman legacy, rallying support from territories once under the empire's rule. Another possible route could involve a cultural renaissance, where the empire does not reclaim territory through force, but asserts influence through economic, cultural, and diplomatic means. By capitalizing on historical prestige, Turkey could position itself as the heart of a modern Ottoman sphere of influence, forming alliances with countries in the Balkans, Middle East, and North Africa. In today's world, military conquest is less feasible than it was centuries ago, so a modern revival would likely combine diplomacy, economic influence, and cultural leadership. The empire could draw inspiration from its historical ability to integrate diverse populations, projecting authority through shared identity rather than coercion. For example, offering economic incentives, trade partnerships, and development programs could attract neighboring countries into a symbolic or practical union, reminiscent of the old empire. This approach would not only make a revival more plausible, but also demonstrate the enduring power of soft influence over brute force in the contemporary era. Governance in the 21st century. Historically, the Ottoman Empire was ruled by a sultan who held near absolute power. In a modern context, however, such a system would likely be unworkable. The world today emphasizes democratic norms, human rights, and participatory governance. making a purely monarchical system politically risky and internationally unsustainable. A more plausible model might be a hybrid system in which a symbolic sultan exists, alongside elected representatives managing the day-to-day administration of the state. This would allow the empire to honor its historical traditions while adapting to the expectations of modern citizens and the international community. Another possibility is a federated system, where territories retain autonomy but unite under a central Ottoman authority for shared economic, cultural, and security objectives. In this scenario, the empire could leverage historical legitimacy to foster loyalty and cooperation, while ensuring that local governance accommodates diverse populations. Such a system would also allow the empire to navigate challenges posed by nationalism, ethnic diversity, and international law. In essence, a modern Ottoman Empire would need to be flexible, combining symbolic power with practical governance to maintain stability and relevance. Economic influence in a globalized world. Economic strength has always been central to the Ottoman Empire's historical influence, and in a modern revival, it would remain essential. The empire's historical control of trade routes gave it immense leverage over global commerce, and today's equivalent would involve controlling key infrastructure, energy resources, and technological development. Strategically located, Turkey and a modern Ottoman sphere of influence could dominate shipping routes, ports, and logistics hubs, becoming critical nodes in global trade networks. Investments in infrastructure, technology, and industrial capacity could transform the empire into a regional economic powerhouse capable of attracting international partnerships. Energy resources would be another crucial factor. Much of the Middle East and North Africa remains rich in oil and natural gas, offering the potential for significant economic leverage. By modernizing its energy sector and establishing strategic trade agreements, a revived empire could wield considerable influence over global markets. Additionally, focusing on technology, research, and innovation would ensure that the empire's economic power extends beyond raw resources, giving it a competitive edge in the knowledge-based economy of the 21st century. Economic integration, cultural influence, and trade leadership would collectively allow the empire to project authority without the need for military conquest. Military and strategic challenges. Military power has historically defined the Ottoman Empire, but the strategies of the past would be inadequate in the modern era. Territorial expansion through force is no longer feasible due to international law, treaties, and global scrutiny. A revived empire would need a modern military focused on defense, deterrence, and strategic influence. Investments in advanced technology, cyber warfare, and precision capabilities would allow the empire to maintain security while avoiding unnecessary conflicts. Strategic diplomacy would be equally important. Building alliances with regional powers, participating in international organizations, and engaging in cooperative defense agreements could enhance the empire's influence without resorting to war. Additionally, cultural and economic soft power could serve as a potent tool to assert authority. By promoting shared heritage, economic opportunity, and technological innovation, the empire could gain legitimacy and attract allies while maintaining peace and stability in a region historically marked by tension and conflict. Cultural and social dynamics. The Ottoman Empire's historical strength lay in its ability to integrate diverse populations. In a modern context, maintaining cohesion would require careful management of cultural, ethnic, and religious differences. Tolerance, human rights protections, and inclusive governance would be essential to prevent internal strife. Education, cultural programs, and investment in scientific and artistic initiatives could reinforce a sense of shared identity while projecting influence internationally. Modern communication technologies would allow the empire to promote its culture and heritage globally. Media, tourism, and international educational initiatives could make the empire a symbol of cultural sophistication and historical pride. By highlighting its legacy in architecture, music, cuisine, and literature, the empire could cultivate both domestic loyalty and international prestige. Cultural influence would be a critical complement to economic and political power, demonstrating that soft power can be as effective as military might in shaping global perceptions and alliances. Geopolitical implications. The revival of the Ottoman Empire would have profound implications for regional and global geopolitics. European nations, particularly those in the Balkans, would watch closely, concerned about potential territorial claims or historical grievances. Middle Eastern states might react with either cooperation or resistance, depending on historical ties and contemporary alliances. Global powers such as the United States, Russia, and China would likely assess the empire's economic and strategic influence carefully, adjusting their policies to protect interests in energy, trade, and security. In navigating these challenges, diplomacy would be paramount. Engaging in multilateral institutions, honoring international treaties, and establishing strong regional partnerships would allow the empire to expand influence without triggering conflicts. Success would depend on balancing assertiveness with prudence, ensuring that ambitions align with modern norms of global governance, while capitalizing on historical legacy and regional opportunities. Challenges to sustaining the empire. Even with careful planning, a modern Ottoman Empire would face significant obstacles. Nationalist movements in former territories could resist incorporation, while economic disparities across regions would complicate integration. Cultural diversity, historical tensions, and competing political agendas would present constant challenges to cohesion. International law, global organizations, and modern human rights standards would limit traditional forms of expansion, forcing the empire to rely on influence rather than conquest. Maintaining legitimacy would also be crucial. The empire would need to project authority while respecting autonomy and local identities, balancing symbolic power with practical governance. Success would require innovation, adaptability, and strategic foresight, demonstrating that modern empires cannot rely solely on historical prestige or military might to survive. If this video through history and what-if scenarios sparked your curiosity, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking explorations into the mysteries and hypotheticals of our world. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.